Hello, and welcome to The Executive Appeal, a show that convenes the world's most powerful and successful leaders to share mentoring and career advancement advice to help you successfully transition into senior level executive positions. I'm your host, Alex Tremble, award-winning speaker, author, and leadership expert with over a decade of experience coaching and advising some of our nation's most senior level government leaders. So if you're ready to reach your goals, let's get started. Hey, welcome, you ambitious leaders, to another power-packed episode of The Executive Pill. And I'm your host, Alex Tremble, and I am thrilled to have you joining us today. This is the podcast where we go beyond the ordinary, moving past the cliches of just work hard to actually uncover the true secrets of reaching the executive level and being and remaining successful. And you know, I'm not just your very handsome, very awesome guest. I am also an international keynote speaker and executive coach. So if you and your organization is seeking an engaging and motivational speaker for your next event, look no further. I've had the privilege and honor of addressing audiences around the world, sharing insights that go beyond the surface and leave a long-lasting impact. Whether it's developing meaningful relationships with your teams, mentors, clients, and even fellow executives, or if you're focused on providing your audience with the strategies required to achieve exceptional results in the face of life's very complex and difficult challenges, I've got you covered. So don't miss out on your opportunity to elevate your team and stakeholders' potential. Visit alextremble.com and book me for your next opportunity today. Let's make your next event unforgettable together. And now, with no further ado, can I say today is a good day? See, today we have the always amazing and just thoughtful and just so quietly intense Mr. James Rhee. James is a high school teacher and Harvard Law graduate student who transitioned from the private equity investor world, transitioned from that high school. Oh, goodness gracious. I was telling James, I'm like a Taylor Swift fan right now. I'm just so excited. Let me run this back. So today we have James Rhee. James is a high school teacher and Harvard Law School graduate turned private equity investor and CEO. There we go. James' leadership story first grabbed global attention during his unlikely 7-year tenure as the chairman and first-time CEO of Ashley Stewart. After his radical and yet intuitive approach, fueled by a transition and a transcendent and unprecedented reinvention story of that company, James crystallized his leadership philosophy and operating system, kindness plus a little bit of math, in the form of Red Helicopter, his media education platform. He bridges math and emotions by marrying capital with purpose while composing systems that bridge peoples, disciplines, and ideas. His transformational leadership has been recognized by leading civic and business organizations. Rhee teaches at Howard University, where he serves as the Johnson Chair of Entrepreneurship at MIT Sloan School of Management and Duke Law Schools. This guy is ridiculous. His TEDx talk, let me run that back. His TED talk and Dare to Lead interview with Brené Brown have captured the imagination of millions. He is the author of the phenomenal book, which we will be discussing today, Red Helicopter. And I like to say, I like to call him a friend of mine. How are you doing today, Mr. Kind Sir?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Well, you can't call me Kind Sir and Mr. Rhee and say friend. How about James? We're good. I've met your family, and so we're already at friend level a long time ago. So it's great to be with you, and nice to meet all your friends on air.
Oh, thank you so much. Everyone, just so you know, we met last year, and I will tell you, it was an amazing experience. We were, had the opportunity to interview for the fireside chat, James, at this big leadership conference in DC. And it was amazing how when you spoke, all eyes were on you. The room was quiet and focused. And again, I said, it's weird because you're such a chill guy, but your chillness is also composed with this intense nature because you care.
I do care, and it's something that we don't talk enough about. I think I know great leaders care. Great leaders are emotionally connected, and I think particularly the fellas that are listening to this, sometimes we're programmed not to think that caring is cool or caring is powerful. There's nothing more, quote, powerful or influential than actually caring.
Well, I could not read your book before having this conversation with you. So there's a few words I want to throw at you today and get some elaboration on. And that this first word is actually completely connected to what you just said. You talk about kindness.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about kindness and how, I mean, as you said, many people could say, well, by being kind, you're naive. You're setting yourself up to get taken advantage of. So how should what do you mean we talk about kindness, and how should people lead with kindness, knowing just how difficult and complex the world is?
Well, a lot of the book is a journey of awakening and a journey of sort of unlearning things that you think to be true that are not true,
Mhm.
and trusting your not just intuition, but wisdom. Like it's a wisdom that all of us have inside us just because we're human. We're living in a world right now where things like it's not just kindness, but there's a lot of things that we think are true because our devices and
Mhm.
marketing dollars and advertising dollars try to convince us for it to be true. And so, one of the things I dispel in the book is that kindness is somehow weak, or that it's nice, that it's random. It's something that you doom scroll on YouTube, and it's like giving someone an ice cream cone on a street somewhere on a hot day. That's not what kindness is. It's just not accurate. Kindness
Mhm.
it is not just religious. It's secular. Kindness
Yeah.
was the underpinning of things like liberty, uh, free markets. When Adam Smith and Rousseau basically invented these concepts in the 18th and 19th centuries, they debated publicly about kindness. So what kindness really is, it's and think about it, you don't use that word a lot.
Mm,
Not
mm-mm.
something that you just say, oh, that's kind.
Yeah.
It's something that you're unlocking something deep in humanity. What it really is, and what I try to show and demonstrate, is that it's when you invest in some other human being's agency, and agency meaning that you're giving someone the tools to make informed decisions that's best for themselves. And
Yeah.
with that comes accountability to others. That is truly the definition of agency. And that makes sense, right? That's why, like the founder of free markets, Adam Smith, right? And the founder of liberty, Rousseau,
Mhm.
realized that agency and kindness, it's people pursuing their self-interest within a framework, within a system of realizing that you were dependent on other people.
Yeah.
That's what kindness is. Which is, by
I
the way, slowly dissipating in our not just corporate culture, but our civic culture. We'll get to that later, but that's why the timing of the book.
I mean, no, I mean, so another book I finished reading right before yours was the Anxious Generation.
Yes.
And in that book, it talks about just how social media and our media in general, it rewards I would say maybe the opposite of kindness. It rewards the negativity. It rewards, thinking that everyone's after you. And it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy because the more we engage with this stuff, the more we think it's real. As you said, these concepts that we think are what drives the world, but it's just only that because of marketing dollars and algorithms and so on and so forth.
Well, that's why everyone is basically, as I write in my prelude, is basically living in a haze right now.
Mm,
Right. That's why it's not just that suicide rates are up and despondency's up, and that people are all on sorts of antidepressants. It's not just that. Even those who are just living, there's a pit in a stomach feeling that things are not right.
yeah.
Right. And As adults, we feel that way, and I know that you're a young father, and you have a young, like, it's the next generation that they know things aren't
Mhm.
right. That's why I'm spending so much time in the classrooms these days. I want to be with young people. It's not just read about them. I want to be with them in a classroom.
Yeah.
They're not doing well. And because young people, they haven't bought into this full system yet. They're still like rawly human. They
Mhm.
know intuitively that things are not right. And they have very little respect for most adults in this world right now, rightfully so, and saying, you want us to be grown-ups, but you don't act like that. And we're not
Yeah.
sure that we don't like your rules of being a grown-up because they don't jive with what we know intuitively to be true.
Um, I tell this story about how I asked this question at one of my talks. When do babies develop, or when do babies have or possess the ability to walk? And most people say, oh, 9 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever. The actual truth is that babies are born with the fundamentals required to walk. It's actually, if people take some time and Google the word infant stepping. So if you take a week old infant and kind of hold them right above the floor or some kind of surface, they will move left, right, left, right. Like they'll move their legs. But what happens, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months into it, they don't do anymore because they haven't practiced that skill. Something that was so by nature in them. They don't utilize that skill. They're being held. They're just laying down all the time. So it kind of goes away. And so when you're talking about, like, there are these intuitive feelings and thoughts and about what life should be like, and we're losing those. That is the very, again, I think they're spot on. And so how, for those individuals who want to get that intuitive nature back, right? Who want to move in a healthier environment, who, again, they're trying to get those next levels, but how do you do that? How do you do that and be quote unquote successful?
Well, I often talk about sort of life in terms of like a barbell. You know, that when you go to the gym, the dumbbells, the
Hmm.
barbells.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, what the things I focused on in my life is that I live my life like a barbell, meaning, like, on the one hand, on the right hand side, these big picture principles of kindness, of
Hmm.
realizing, of math, of laws of nature, of genetics, of physiology. It's physics. It's these laws that are immutable. You have to understand them. I mean,
Yeah.
these are algorithms of, like, nature. That's
Hmm.
on the one hand, and you have to really realize that those algorithms of nature, they are immutable. Like,
Hmm.
they supersede any algorithms of, like, man-made law.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, the other side of the barbell is attention to detail. It's like not the actions of other people, it's your actions. It's like trying to live your life
Mm.
in small steps that are consistent with those rules. And
Yeah.
then you realize that the humility of this is that the part that connects the two ends of the barbell, these things are very fluid.
Yeah.
That's just the things that connect them, and you have to realize that you have to be very agile. You have to sort of realize that you're not in full control of the middle of the barbell, but that if the two ends of the barbell are firmly grounded,
Ooh.
you will live a agile and realistic life. But it's to give up one of the ends of the barbell.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. It's ungrounding. And so that's my advice to people, whether you're leading your life or leading a company or leading others in a company. Those two principles, like,
Yeah.
always try to keep those things very grounded and very accurate and factual.
So that actually takes me to the next word I want to bring up. We talked about kindness.
Mhm.
The next word you talked about is enough.
Yeah.
What is enough? I'm gonna. I've worked with leaders who are just kind and wonderful, awesome, amazing people, and they'll say, "Hey, look, I got an opportunity to go up and make." They're making 400, and then make me 500 or 600, something like that, and
Yeah.
they're like, "It." But is that? I feel greedy. I feel. I mean, I'm like, is what I have enough? Should it be enough? Like, there is this question of what is enough and what's too much that you're just giving up. It's not worth it, right?
Yeah, I think that, the point that I raise about the word enough in the book is, like, I think the overarching principle is that I've increasingly done a better job. I don't need a lot of external validation. Like,
Mhm.
I make my decisions on those barbell principles. I don't sway my value systems based on the whims of social media or the politics of the day. I try to live my life based on one, kindness, and then next, math. And that's it. And so my enough is based on what's enough for me.
Yeah.
And everyone has a different formula of enough. And I'm not just talking about money, but
Yeah.
enough free time, enough stimulation, enough friendship, enough um, hobbies, enough money. It's a balance, right? It's everyone has their own balance. The biggest mistake people make in life is that they look for extrinsic validation, external validation. And I didn't really have the need for extrinsic validation for the vast majority of my life, other than during a period of my life when I was actually at my most, quote, prestigious parts of my life, when I was sort of like cock of the walk private equity guy at a huge firm, like doing flying private planes and all this stuff. And I started feeling that slipping away where,
Yeah.
you know, I wanted to sort of, quote, fit in and sort of live and look like that type of person.
Hmm.
And it was probably some of my most unhappy years, despite the fact I arguably may have made the most amount of money, at least on a current income basis during those years. But I was obviously selling, it was at a price,
Yeah.
right? It was
Yeah.
at a price of my own autonomy, my own identity. And so that for me, like, it's not the reason why I wrote the book it reads more like a fictional novel in a very kind of Uncle James tone. It's not a prescriptive book. I'm not
Yeah.
telling people, do it this way, you're dumb, here are 5 things to make you less dumb. I don't like books like that. That's not what leadership is. And the
Yeah.
book is purposely saying it's your agency
Yeah.
to decide what's enough. And if you need permission to do that, then I'm here for you. If you need someone to whisper in your ear saying, you're all right, your instincts about yourself are good, then I'm that person.
There's this push and pull with enough, um, because some people some people have accomplished a great deal. Well, let me take a step back. I believe I 100% agree with you, and I think that it's important for us to take time to slow down, to quiet our minds, to quiet our space, to actually figure out what is enough for me versus he said, looking on social media, looking at the next person, say, oh, what do they have? What do they have? Because that's not going to help me. It's going to, if anything, it'll stress me out. Now, if I think my neighbor is doing something absolutely wonderful and I go do it and I'm like, yeah, I got it too. And I'm not fulfilled because it's not what I wanted. Right. So I think it takes some time to figure out what is enough for you. But there's that middle line where some people think it's enough, not because it is enough, but because they don't think they're worth it, right? They don't
Yes.
think they're worth enough. And so they aim so low. What do you say to those people?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that was the most, let's just talk right now about Ashley Stewart and
Mm-hmm.
why I did what
Yeah.
I did. So for your listeners who haven't read the book or haven't watched the TED or don't know the story, so you have to picture me 43 years, 42 years old, like kind of peak of my career in some ways, I would say, like private equity guy, Boston, son of immigrant parents who knew what private equity was. I didn't know what private equity was for most of my life until I was doing it. But on the outside, like checking all the boxes, doing, well financially. And money's part of life, right? It's part of the joy balance, but it's not everything, as we'll get to. And then there was a group of women that worked and were serviced by a company called Ashley Stewart, most of whom were women, Black, moderate income, plus size. And so that was the demographic that the company employed and served. And on the surface of it, you may think, as a Korean American guy, I have no understanding of this woman, but not really, because I lived with a woman, meaning my mother, who's
Mm-hmm.
deceased now, but that internally shared some qualities with these women, that they tended to doubt themselves, that they sometimes underestimated their abilities, that they were made to feel small by systems, by media, by everything in their ear was to make them feel not worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And as a little boy, I hated that. And I wrote about it. I hated it
Mm-hmm.
because my mother, to me, I've not met a more effective leader than my mother. And in any context. And
Mm-hmm.
in the women of Ashley Stewart that I met, right away, I saw the same dynamic. I was like, ladies, what you do every day, like at work, at home, many of whom were single moms, right? And like, I just said, they never asked for credit. They just did things. And at the same time, they didn't understand, frankly, how borderline heroic it was what they were
Mm-hmm.
pulling off. And when I started to explain to them, and a lot of this, sometimes you have to be careful because you don't want people to feel overwhelmed. But
Yeah.
I showed them, I said, if you really understood, which is what the book gets at,
Yeah.
what you were up against, you would look in the mirror and say, I did that
Yeah.
despite everything that it's unnamed. I can feel there's a wind in my face, but now that you named it,
Mm-hmm.
the whole game of Monopoly, which I write about in chapter 4, is kind of wired against me, and yet I'm still doing. And so that was that. And so, yeah, I'm very hypersensitive to, I'm just hypersensitive to seeing people feeling small. I don't like it. And I have lived a life where I find value in people and companies when no one else does, particularly that person. Like, I get involved, and it's
Yeah.
not in sort of like a, you know, hero way, mansplain way. It's more like just a concerned friend.
Yeah.
I'm just like, hey, like, don't listen to everybody else. You're all right. Like, and like, just you sing your song, you do your thing. Like, I hear it. You got one person in your corner.
Yeah.
And yeah, so people do aim low because they're told to. And
Yes.
it bothers me. And so, you're very insightful about how you describe me, sort of like calmly intense. My whole personality and the whole book, my whole life is an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense. It's both arms of the
Mm-hmm.
barbell, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, but like, my only time you'll see less calm, more intense, is reserved for people who make other people feel small.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll see Hurricane James is not a pleasant person to deal with.
Can I just say that I think that that's so important. Um, I do hear and see a lot nowadays saying, we should always be that calm person. But I think there are times that we need to fight for
Yeah.
the person or the thing that we believe in and be like, hey, no, this is serious. I'm really serious about this.
Yes. Like, there was a funny article. I forget which it was, like early on during my time there. It was an article written by a Black woman who said, it was like a quiet gladiator or something like this. That's how they described. And the women at the company used to say to me, you make us feel so safe and calm because you're so calm.
Yeah.
But we know when you have to, and only if we sort of give you the nod, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not my fight. It's like,
Yeah.
you have to be invited to, but that you'll fight to the death for us.
Yeah.
And I said, ladies, I don't lose street fights. I don't. And they would be like, we know you don't. And I just said, but you don't want that all the time. But when it's necessary, it's showing anger, particularly when you're in control. Like, it's not like crazy anger and like
Yeah.
you're at
Yeah.
like histrionics of like, but yeah, like, leadership tip for those listening, being calm and collected and being in control of your emotions is always important. That said, showing emotion When you're in control of them, it is a sign of strength, right? When you show anger to somebody, and if even occasionally dropping a F-bomb in a calculated way, you're showing strength, and it's really showing your strength vis-a-vis the other person in a relationship. It's like, no, will not let that fly. And so, like, be very mindful that, because I know, like, a lot of people, particularly I think women, and then also men that are not that are in a minority group, right, get penalized for showing emotion, right?
Yeah.
And saying, oh, look, you're so emotional.
The
That's
angry black guy, the
yeah,
angry this.
and that's BS. I mean, that's like again, like that's a fact, and that sort of has to be dealt with. But do not lose that quiver in your arrow in that quiver. It's part of your arsenal. Have to keep it.
There's so many things I want to talk to you about. I only have so much time, but I want to talk to you about communication, and I want you to, if you can briefly share, if you would briefly share the story about the damn jacket, and
Yeah.
and how that helps you with communication skills.
Yeah. So for everyone listening, like I define language really broadly. Some people define language as like, German or Italian, English, Japanese. I define language in terms of those things too, but also emotional language, body language, finance, accounting. These are languages and so growing up, my mother's English was not very good. And so there was one time it was in style to have a denim jacket, like a jean jacket. And I didn't have it. And, I guess we didn't have tons of extra funds for me to get a denim jacket from my parents. And so I had to work for it. And so I said to my mom that I want a denim jacket. She thought I was saying damn jacket. And so she was really disappointed in me, I think, for a long time, saying that, why are you cursing in front of your mother, which I never did. But I came home one day after bussing tables, and I bought a denim jacket, and she started laughing and saying, I thought you meant damn jacket. And I was shocked at how passionate you were about and inappropriate you were. I was like, no, Mom, I was saying denim jacket. And so that's just one story of how I grew up, so that the way that I communicated at home, I had to really make sure that my mom in particular understood what I was saying. And to do that, I had to use words, my eyes, my body language, my hand gestures. And so it's the same thing about how I tend to do everything opposite. When I speak, I'm actually listening. And it goes to the fact that when you speak and when you lead or when you're kind, what your intention is actually doesn't matter. It's how it's received. That's effective communications, how it's received. So you could be a terrible, quote, terrible speaker and have weird body language or whatever. But if the people that are listening to you receive it correctly, you're an incredible communicator. And so that's the thing, that it's the subtlety, right? I think that it's in this country in particular, in the US, we tend to sort of emphasize what you can see or what you can hear. I tend to emphasize what you cannot.
When I read that story, I smiled to myself, because I'm like, James and I are so many alike in so many different ways. I think we all have much more in common than we do different, actually. But my mother-in-law was here for us when we had a kid. She was there for the first. I mean, you met her. She was here for the first 5 months of him being, born. And one day she brought me aside, and actually it was after you and I met. After you and I had our conversation, and she's like, Alex, in very, very broken English, she said, Alex, how is it that you are a professional speaker and you speak to all these people, and I speak very broken English, yet we can have such in-depth conversations? And I told her, I said, it's because you and I are committed to communicating. Like you said, it's not just about the words. It's about, what's her emotions behind it, slowing down. If she doesn't understand it, meaning not just saying, oh, well, you don't get it, so that's on you. Is there another way that I can explain this? communication is not just, like you said, it's not just about saying words. It's so much more. And if we can all decide to communicate and commit to communicate to one another, I think we hear each other so much differently than what we do at large right now.
Yeah, I mean, we are living in a culture right now where definitions are all distorted. Communication, what it means today, and like the technology stack we live in, the media stack we live in, is who speaks the loudest, who shouts the loudest,
Yeah.
who is like posting the most things. And then, we count likes, we count all of these things, but that's not what communication is. It's not. And communication is really felt. In Korean, there's a word, this is not in the book, it's called maum. It's sort of this concept doesn't exist in English. It's, what is your heart and mind? Maum. Your heart, it's almost like with the women of Ashley, maybe they would say more like, what's your soul? Like, what's it saying to you? And so maum is like, when you communicate well, you're touching people's and communicating to both their quote mind and their heart at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. So people's deductive capacity, that it makes logical sense, and it jives with their intuitive emotional sense.
Yeah.
And that other language, I mean, we don't teach, it's hard to teach, but we also denigrate it in more Western pedagogy, right? We're saying no emotion, have to be, purely rational all the time. That's why a lot of the things I communicate, both in private sector, public sector, education, and the brand building, I do through music. Because music is a medium, is a language that's both mathematical, right? It's 100% mathematical. You have to be very knowledgeable about cognitive science, about like sound waves, and yet it's also highly emotional. Like, if music doesn't touch your soul, song sucks.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to ask you about, I'm going to put this out there, so maybe you don't have to address it, but everyone know this is very interesting, and you should read the book and looking for this. Hun and Chung. Han and
Han.
Chung.
Han and Han and Chung.
And Chung. Those concepts, I really identify with those, both of them. And I think a lot of people in society would identify with that. I don't know if we allow ourselves to slow down enough to explore these concepts. Again, I'm kind of giving everyone a teaser that hopefully you'll go read it and know exactly what James is talking about. But I do want to ask you a really quick question that's really important to me.
Yeah.
So again, a lot of people who listen to this show are the first in their family to achieve a greater amount of success, at least at the financial level. And they have challenges, and that yes, it brings a lot of opportunities for themselves, for their family, for their kids, but also brings a lot of questions on how to raise a good person. Am I spoiling them? Am I doing too much? Am I doing too little? Am I too hard? And those feelings that are around that. You share a story. I'm going to provide this with context, and I want to hear your initial thoughts and reactions. You share a story in your book about how you were looking for an internship, and the reality was your peers, your friends, your girlfriend, they're all getting these really great internships. But the reason why they were getting these great internships was because they were very connected. They came from connected families who either could float them the money so they can volunteer their time, do a great internship, or they had their father or mother had a connection with somebody who hired them on. And your parents, you were kind of sharing this with them, and they picked up on, like, they felt bad because they didn't have those relationships so they could make those connections. They didn't have the money to float you while you were in school and when you're volunteering. And I feel like there's so many parents out there who feel like that, like, oh my God, I wish I could help my kids out, but I don't have those relationships. So one, just a reaction to that story you told, do you have any initial thoughts on that? But then also, what advice do you have for parents trying to raise good people? You have freaking amazing daughters. So,
well, it was sad. I mean, like, my parents, the sad story was that they And this is not just my immigrant parents, it's a lot of sort of first gen parents, or even like if you're sixth gen in this country, but you're raising kids that you hope to have first gen college. It's like anyone that's coming into the quote game,
Mhm.
right? Um, yeah, my parents realized, they said, oh, just because we got you a good public school education, you went to like Harvard College, you went to Harvard Law School, that's not a guarantee of success. It's not.
Mhm.
And I looked at them and I said, no, not really. Like,
Yeah.
it's not. That's not how the game is played. And that's why that Monopoly analogy, where I said there are rules that are of Monopoly that are not in the rule book,
Mhm.
right? That's when,
Mhm.
remember, my cousins were like, or my kids' cousins were like colluding, and he was like, I didn't know that was in the rules. So with my kids, what I think that the real concept here that's important is agency. They have understood that our goal is to make them equipped to make informed decisions for themselves.
Mhm.
Period.
Yeah.
And I have not cut their legs out, and we have. Some would say it's not. I think it's wrong to say tough love or whatever, but they do not get helicopter parenting from us. They're on their own, and like what they do get is that they've gotten a really high quality education.
Mhm.
We have not skimped on that. We have not skimped on investing in their brain. We obviously invest a lot of our hearts in their sort of feeling safe and protected. So you need to feel that way from an agency standpoint. But we wanted them to kind of suffer a bit. And I
Yeah.
think Jensen Huang just was talking about that with NVIDIA, that he likes people who suffer. And so I do too. I like people who have had a hardship, who've had to earn everything that they have failed, that they've been sort of door slammed in their face, that they know what that tastes like. And what I think the parenting thing that I've done, not just for my kids, but anyone who works with me or who's my friend, who I mentor, I try to avert unnecessary suffering. Good suffering is part of life. Okay. Like, so this whole toxic optimism of like trying to live a perfect life, here are the 5 steps to live a perfect life. It was setting up a very fragile
Yeah.
country and like childhood base. But unnecessary suffering, meaning like racism,
Yeah.
like misogyny, or like
Mhm.
being tortured,
Mhm.
being bullied, I'm very quick to intervene and to say, like good
Mhm.
suffering, okay, that's necessary suffering to learn.
Yeah.
Unnecessary suffering has no place.
James, I could sit here and talk to you forever. I know we got to jump off. You got to do some, crazy book tour and talk to some wonderful people. Oh my God, just the fact. Sorry, I want to also thank you for everything you're doing at Howard. You are 100%. I want to say 110% because that's not a real thing, but you are ridiculously committed to those students, and showing them that you care and that you're willing to put in the time and effort to make sure they're learning, and they should match that at the bare minimum. So just thank you for everything you're doing at Howard.
Thank
And
you. I love teaching. Like I come down as you know, every Thursday I teach my class. It was supposed to be an honorific appointment. I remember saying to Dr. Frederick, I was like, I don't do honorific things. Like put me to work. And so I come down and teach every Thursday. And anytime the kids are late, I sort of give them the look. I'm like, I'm coming down from Boston. They're like, oh, we didn't know. But yeah, it's my favorite. Like being with the students, it's awesome. It's a privilege. So yeah.
I want to call out one last thing before I open the floor for you to share any thoughts you have with the audience as we wrap up. I want everyone to know, please. Again, we talked about how even keel he is, how calm he is, and so on and so forth. But I hope you all read this man's bio, listen to his TED Talks, his books. This guy has lived a phenomenal life, helping so many people. He's been on, received huge awards, met, Whoopi Goldberg, all kind of crazy people. he's in these circles with people who can do really great work. Yet he is just this, I don't want to say, I don't use this word, but like, you're super down to earth. You're super down to earth, caring person, giving kindness to all those around you. So people, I hope you appreciate this. James, is there anything you have to say as we begin to wrap up the show?
Look, I think that first thing I'll say is that the reason why I'm on this podcast and with you, Alex, is because of you. It's the way that, I could sense you were when we met each other in DC and in meeting your wife, and the way that you looked at your kid, the way that you looked at your mother-in-law. And you're a very decent, and you're just a decent person. And so I have a vested interest in your success, and I hope that this is helpful for you and then for your listeners. And I hope that it helps get you more listeners so you can sort of raise your profile and have more of an impact with more people, because you're thinking about things wisely and you're asking the right questions of yourself too, about how you want to live your life. And it's hard. It's much easier to be thoughtless, to not care. It's an quote easier way to live. And it catches up with you though in the long term, because you realize that you have health issues, you have no friends, and that you have an empty life, and you're on like your 12th marriage. And when you die, no one will be at your funeral. And that's, some people just don't want to think about that. And they'll say, I'll deal with that later. But they have misery in their older years. And as we're living longer, it kind of sucks to be miserable when you're old. That's the thing that I want to say, is that it's the way how you are. And like, I am busy, right? And I am on all sorts of like fancy, like whatever. But this is a very, been looking forward to this. I've wanted to do this and to sort of support you and sort of, this is our second act together, isn't it? Like we should,
Yes, sir.
Like our second concert. So that's number one I want to say to everybody. So thank you for being who you are and being a role model for those who are listening to you and just generally in your life. I think the other thing that I would say is that, I really would like for people to read the book. Don't forget the original music on the website too. Keep our eye out for the film adaptation. But the book is basically the curriculum that I'm teaching at Howard, MIT, and Duke, but it's the curriculum that is, I think, going to be taught at many, many schools across the world. It's already being translated into 3-4 languages as we speak. It's a class about agency.
Yeah.
And we send off young adults, and I bet many of you listening right now, you've never really been taught agency. Maybe you learned a little bit about it in philosophy, a little bit, maybe in civics, but how can you have agency if you don't know how your brain works? If you don't know the historical meaning of it, if you don't know how money works, accounting, like how can you have agency? And so we expect people to make decisions and thoughtful decisions about their well-being when we haven't even taught them that in like high school and college, unless you have like really sort of like peculiarly specific grad school level focus on, we're not teaching how your brain works. And so like it's like a farce. And so we know why. I mean, it's much easier for someone with true agency. It's much more difficult to pull the wool over that person's eyes, isn't it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
You cannot make real economic and emotional decisions without understanding several subject matters and how they relate. And I've tried to show that in the book, but more importantly, that's why Ashley Stewart, why the legacy keeps continuing. Like we did it. I mean, we did it, and it had, quote, great success in the conventional terminology, like financially, it was ridiculous what happened.
Yeah.
I think more importantly, it led to things like me being appointed the Johnson Chair of Entrepreneurship at Howard. I've used that as success, like and I don't say this a lot, but with you, given that you brought up Howard, I am going to say this on air. It is a historic appointment to have a Korean American guy chairing entrepreneurship at Howard University. It is. And it took Dr. Frederick, it's a lot of courage on Dr. Frederick's part too, the president emeritus. And he said to me, he's like, you're the right person. I don't care what you look like. You are the right person. And I said to him, I am the right person. And that's Red Helicopter is not just a book. It's really, I'm building a world that I think your kid will know what Red Helicopter is and say that philosophy, that brand, I trust it. It speaks to me. Right? That's the world that I'm building in Red Helicopter. It's for your kid.
Everyone, please read the book. It is a fantastic read. And there's so many things we could have jumped into, but we just don't have the time for it. One of those being, why is it called Red Helicopter? The story behind that is amazing. So I encourage everyone, please pick up the book. You know where we're going with this. James, thank you so much for coming on. Everyone, you know where we're going with this. Don't just look back, reach back. If you found anything of value in today's episode, don't keep it to yourself. To that person over there, they should have been there. Don't do that. Share the episode with them. Click the like, click to subscribe. Please comment, share your thoughts and your thoughts and questions. We love to engage with all of you. I have to just say again, I thank you, James, so much for being on today. And I'm looking forward to continued conversation over the months and years and seeing fantastic, great things from you as we move forward. For everyone else, you know where we're going. As always, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Executive Appeal with Alex Tremble. I invite you to follow The Executive Appeal wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me, your host, Alex Tremble, across all socials or via email for exclusive webinars, courses, and speaking engagements on continued topics of executive leadership. So until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.